warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. I am Ayu Tazkiyatunnufus from Economic Education 2017. I will present my thesis, the title of Development of Critical Thinking Ability Assessment Instrument Students, Study on Material Economic Growth and Development of Students in High School. The Honorable Mr. Dr. Saptono, S.Pd, M.Pd as a first, my supervisor, the Honorable Mr. Dr. Suparno, S.Pd, M.Pd as a second, my supervisor, and the Honorable Mrs. Professor Dr. Sri Indah Nikansari, S.A, M.S.A, and the examiner lecturer. First, the background. Education is an important sector in the progress of a country. The current education cannot be separated from the guidelines that have been met. Critical thinking is a very important essential ability. The ability to think critically has a very broad scope. It is expected to have good knowledge so that they can criticize various exciting phenomena. The reality in KBM is that sometimes educators are still not fully able to train students' critical thinking skills. The result of interviews that have been held by researchers to teachers show that the assessment instrument used has not fully measured students' critical thinking skills. This can be seen from the evaluation question given that are not fully oriented to develop students' critical thinking skills. So, students are not trained to develop their critical thinking skills. This results in low critically tend to only accept what is conveyed or written in the books, and a passive in asking question and answering question from probably posed by the teacher, as well as expressing the ideas from solving problems. So, the purpose of the study is to one, find out in the instruments for developing students critically thinking skills on the material for economic growth and development of senior high school 1 and 2 calendar. Number 2, finding steps to develop critical thinking assessment instrument for economic growth and development at senior high school 1 and 2 calendar. And the 3, knowing the developed instrument has met the criteria of validity and reliability. Method. The research and development or R&D research. This research was develop an assessment instrument on the material of economic growth and development at senior high school 1 and 2 calendar in order to improve the ability of students to think critically. The development procedure used in this study refers to the box and goal development model. The procedure carried out by researchers are 12 steps. The subjects of this study were students of class 11, social 1 to 3, senior high school 1 calendar, and class 11, social 1 to 3, and 11, science 1 to 3, senior high school 2 calendar. For the first trial, the students of class 11, social 2, senior high school 2 calendar were 32 students, and the final test was 236 students. The product used 30 assessment items for the first trial, and then 25 assessments items for the final field test. Standardization of the instrument using vector analysis technique with KMO test or Kaiser-Meyer-Alkin using SPSS software. Result and discussion. The research data are the result of validation tests by experts, the result of the small scale trials, the result of the final field test, and the last, the result of standardization instrument with vector analysis of each instrument element. So, discussion. Based on study from previous experts and research, it can be concluded that there is correlation or relation between critical thinking skills and HOTS, because these two things are the presets of assessment equation using the HOTS concept. It will train students' abilities in answering questions with a high level of thinking power. This is also reinforced by the notion that critical thinking skills are student high-level thinking skills about how to examine an even incident problem or problem in order to obtain an initial gauge as essence as a rational procedure for collection results about something that is believed and carried out clearly through aspects of interpretation, analysis, evaluation, conclusion, and explanation. Conclusion. Based on the result of the discussion regarding this research and development of critical thinking assessment, the following conclusion can be drawn. 1. From the 30 questions that were developed, 25 items were carved out with limited trials and final field tests. Based on the validity test with product moment correlation and reliability with concurrent batch alpha, it was found that the 25 questions were valid and reliable. Number 2, standardization of the instrument using the KMO test showed that the 6 elements of the existing instrument had internally valid result, namely elements of interpretation, analysis, evaluation, conclusion, and explanation, because the KMO and MSA test values are regarded. So it shows the data is valid and reliable in a construct. Suggestion by research that can be given by research are: number 1, recommendation for school should be able to provide online facility for students in order to improve student learning abilities. Number 2, recommendation for education. Every educator should pay more attention to assessment instrument in the critical realm in order to improve students' critical thinking skills. And the last, recommendation for further research should be able to focus more on indicators that can measure that variable studied, can research other economic learning materials, and can further develop the characteristic of assessment instrument on materials that are easier to apply by students. For example, material development. So, I think that's enough. I'm sorry if I have a mistakes in my present thesis. And thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.